Thank you, Tammy. Thanks for Borders for hosting the event. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming out on a Saturday when the Farm Bureau Fair and surf's up and everything else. We appreciate it. Usually I'm taking a nap about now on Saturdays, so if I fall asleep, just give me a nudge. So yeah, this is our third novel that we've published together, and it's kind of the third novel in a trilogy. The first novel was about Japanese woodblock prints, and there was a famous Japanese artist named Hokusai, and it's kind of a fictional accounting of his life, as well as tying in some modern day Japanese robotics and artificial intelligence. So what I like to do is take an old Japanese kind of art and a modern day facet of life and combine those into a story. The second novel is called The Fourth Treasure, and it compared the Japanese art of shodo, which is calligraphy, and the modern day science that I looked at was neuroscience. So, and this third novel is called Oh, A Mystery of Mono no Aware, and the Japanese art in this case is poetry, and the modern day facet of life is social networking. So you've all heard of social networking websites like Facebook and MySpace, those kinds of websites. In Japan, there's a phenomenon of people getting together online to talk about suicide. So if they're interested in committing suicide and they are looking for advice or looking for fellow people to actually get together to commit suicide, there's a small tragic group of people that do that online. So that's kind of the aspect of modern day society I'm looking at. So it's comparing traditional Japanese poetry and modern day social networking. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Mystery of Mono no Aware is the subtitle. And Mono no Aware is this old Japanese term that poets wrote about starting back in the early, Japanese poetry goes back to like 700 AD, so it's a really long tradition. And back in 1700, this scholar named Motoori Norinaga looked at Japanese poetry, and he decided there was a running thread through all Japanese poetry, and it was called aware. And aware is this feeling that we get when we experience the world in an emotional sense. And so there's a lot of Japanese poetry, there's a lot of this feeling of aware. And if you could think of aware as a particular kind of emotion, I would say it's kind of the looking at the sadness and beauty. So, for example, in Japan, everyone likes to go to watch cherry blossoms when they bloom. So they have these big, huge cherry blossom festivals, and they're celebrating these cherry blossoms because they bloom in just a short amount of time, and then they die relatively quickly. So there's this idea of the beautiful cherry blossoms, but they're only going to be around for a few days. So that was kind of one of the ideas of aware. And so mono no aware is the things of aware, or the things of sadness, or the things of emotion. And so that's what Japanese poetry was. A lot of the Japanese poets use this theme in their poetry. And so I ran into this concept when I was working on my second novel, and I decided that it was an interesting concept I wanted to explore. So I contacted a publisher, and we decided to do a book on it, and it was going to be a nonfiction book. So I wrote a long book about it, and I sent it to the publisher, and he says, "Oh, you're not really getting it. You're not really capturing the idea." He said so. So I thought about it some more, and I wrote some more about it. I sent it back to him. He goes, "Nah, you're still not getting it." And so he kind of said, "Well, why don't you just give up on the idea?" And I said, "No, I'm not really sure I want to give up on the idea." So I wrote a short story about Mono no Aware with the character that's in Japan going to a cherry blossom festival, and from that short story that I got published, I started feeling more and more that I understood this Mono no Aware concept, and I wrote 3 chapters of a novel based on this short story and sent it to a publisher and said, "I've got this idea about Japanese poetry and suicide clubs and this really old Japanese concept." And of course, the publishers are always a little skeptical at first about what kind of books they think will sell. So it was kind of a hard sell for this one publisher I went to. But I went to this publisher, this new publisher who's publishing books about Japan, Chin Music Press in Seattle, and he was really excited about it. So this is exactly the kind of book we want to do. So So we were lucky to find a publisher, and they did a beautiful job on the book, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And Linda will also talk about the art that's in the book. So let's see.